All right. Well, as the panelists have made it to the stage, again, I want to thank everyone for making it here. I guess I'm looking straight at Andy in particular. I got a text from Andy Swigart saying yesterday morning that he couldn't make it. And then I got a text about an hour later, said, "Wait, Delta's brought in some new flights. I might be able to make it." But as it would, we did have a late scratch. Steve Bick, who was supposed to be the moderator on this panel, didn't make it, but we were successful in bringing in also eligible Pat Cummings. So let me introduce the panel briefly. Again, Pat Cummings, who is on a panel tomorrow, happened to be here and actually has worked with this group on this topic, the executive director of the newly established National Thoroughbred Alliance. My friend Rick Hammerly, all of you know him well, I'm sure, from his help in broadcasting Steve Bick's show at the races, but he's a consultant for First Racing, the director of racing and the Kentucky Downs. We've also very happy to have David O'Farrell here. David is a longtime friend from my time down in Ocala. Afterwards, we'll tell you softball stories of our days playing down there in the farm leagues, but general manager of his family's farm, kind of a similar path to Price Bell, but Ocala Stud in Ocala is one of the premier farms, and I've often heard, and I don't know if David, I'm sure he's heard this. Everybody always says Ocala Stud is the Claiborne Farm of Florida, and I would give that very honored analogy to that. So, and then also my friend Andy. Andy Swigart's been with Toba for a number of years now, but senior director of industry relations, was always great sounding board. I've appreciated his friendship through the years, especially on questions that I had pitched at me about the greatest stakes. And when I was on the board of trustees at Toba, it was always a sound person to get some questions answered. So we really appreciate the panelists and certainly Pat for jumping in here. But just to finish that story real quick, the racing conditions, I remember calling Kent Sterling and then Dave Basler asking about the simulcasting group. And I told Rick this story the other day, getting on a panel trying to talk about, increasing field size and the conditions of races. And one of my first comments was the easiest way is to stop riding races that are non-winners of 2, unless you won on a Wednesday and you broke from the 3-hole and your horse is chestnut. That expansion of conditions has always been a little frustrating for me. And I would say that as a farm manager, having 270 horses in training with Mr. Stronach, you're looking at horses sitting and not getting into a race. And so I think that this topic, this panel right now is about as important as anything as I can imagine. We're trying to get conditions of races to where we can increase field size. We know from statistics that, that sweet spot between 8 and 10 horses, that's where the horse players want to be. So I think it's an important topic, and I really appreciate these guys getting here. And thanks again, Pat, for subbing in. So take it away.
Well, we're here. And just want to take a few seconds to thank everyone involved here. This is my first time, I know, to Prairie Meadows, and I'll tell you what, I'm totally impressed with not only the racing. I got to see a race or two on Monday night, but the entire facility here. It's very similar to what they've done at Oaklawn with the casino and the hotel and the racetrack, kind of all connected, and it's clean. People are friendly, and so thanks for having us here. I'm glad we made the trip. Thanks to Doug and Eric as well. I got to tell this story, Eric, you know that. So a couple months ago, Eric, in passing somewhere, he said, "Hey, we're going to do this panel. Do you mind coming on the panel?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. Make sure you just get the dates to me and we'll get it done." So about a month later or something, he calls me and I'm at home and he's reading off the dates and I'm in my little office in the back and it's July 23, 24, 25 or something like that. So I yell in the other room to my wife, Gina, because we have a little calendar we put on when we're going places. And I said, hey, what do we got planned for the 23rd, 24th, 25th of July? And she comes in the room all excited. She goes, it says DM on the calendar. We're going to Del Mar. And I go, oh, how am I going to get out of this one? I said, DM, that's Des Moines. I'm going to Des Moines. So it worked out perfect on the calendar. She thought I had a plan, but she thought we were going to Del Mar. We're going there next week. But I'm glad I came to Des Moines. But it was some quick thinking at the time. I thought I was a goner. But anyway, I'm glad we made it here. So this broad category that we've been assigned here, we're kind of at two different ends of it. We're Andy and David and myself are all members of the Graded Stake Committee, and Eric wanted us to kind of go through that a little bit. So Andy's going to start out with a PowerPoint conversation, and we're gonna talk about the graded stakes, and then we're gonna wheel into another phase, and that's gonna have to do with a new way of presenting races in a condition book, and maybe writing races and running race, and that has to do with ratings. And something that's been boiling under the surface for a little bit. And there's a group of us that have been trying to push this thing over the hill. Pat is part of that group, and we have some backing now, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So and we'll explain what that is. And Eric wanted to make sure that we let everybody know that we're not getting rid of claiming races. That's not in the plan. But we'll lay out a few things for you that we think is really going to help horsemen and racetracks put on a better show and be more confident in the races that are written. So, and we want to encourage you while we're making our presentations and we're talking, you can play. We're going to let you play like a little bit of a jock agent here. You can step in at any time and raise your hand or ask a question, shoot it out. When there's a pause in anything we're saying, we welcome you to let us have your thoughts if there's something that comes up while we're saying something, whether it's the graded stakes or in the ratings conversation. So we want to try to include you in the conversation as well. So onward and upward. Andy, right. We ready?
Yeah, whenever you are. All right. Again, thanks, Eric, for inviting me to come out and speak on this. The American Graded Stakes Committee. I had a longer presentation for this, but I pared it down to 4 slides because this can be pretty dry stuff and didn't want to make your eyes glaze over too badly. So I'll just talk through these 4 slides, and then Rick and Dave can add their 2 cents if they wish, and certainly take any questions. The purpose of the Graded Stakes Committee is to, as you can see, provide a reliable guide to the relative quality of thoroughbred bloodstock by identifying basically the best races. And the way it does that, or I should give a little history first. It started in 1973 by TOBA at the urging of some European officials who had recently created their European Pattern Committee. And Jacques Wimpheimer headed that project, and it was kicked off in 1973, where he and some other TOBA board members, along with some racing officials, I'm trying to think, Kenny No, Jimmy Kilroe, Tommy Trotter, and I forget who else, sat down in a room with the help of the Blood Horse and came up with the first list of 300 some odd races that they identified and then ranked as grade 1, 2, or 3. And then, so the makeup of the committee has gone from that and through a few iterations over the years to what it currently is the last 20, 25 years of basically 5 or now 6 owners and breeders that are members of TOBA and 5 racing officials. So, go on to the next one. This committee will look at the races in now 18 divisions. We're up to 18 divisions now. Oh, there's my first typo. Okay. 18 divisions. It started out 14 when I first started working with the committee 20 some odd years ago. and in recent years have added the 2-year-old turf, 2-year-old filly turf, and then the 2 older sprint turf divisions. As we all know, turf racing has become quite popular in the last several years. And as the number of those races created by racetracks have increased, the committee has responded by adding divisions as the number of those races reached a critical mass enough where it could separate them out from their comparable dirt races and into their own division. So there are 18 divisions that the committee now looks at. And at this past grading session, there were almost 1,000 races eligible for grading. I think 970 was the number. And that keeps, as the total number of races conducted in the US keeps decreasing, the number of eligible races for grading keeps increasing as some certain tracks and states have been creating a number of stakes races the last 8 years.
And that's not the total number of graded races. That includes
just
listed and unlisted.
Yeah, those are races that are eligible to receive a grade. It doesn't mean they do. It's just that they're eligible, and the committee has to review those races. So how does it review these races? Well, each of those 970 races has a workbook page, and each division that you just saw, those 18 divisions, there's a separate book for each division with all the races in that division in it. And each of those races has this page. This page you see here is the summary page. There are 2 pages for each race. So this summary page, so it has basically a summary of the statistical measurements you see there above the chart, and then the chart of the most recent renewal under review. And then on the second page, which you don't see here, there'll be up to 4 other charts similar to the one you see there on the prior 4 renewals. So there can be a total of 5 races the last 5 years basically in the workbook that the committee is looking at, because it's not looking at one particular race with just the current year, it's looking at a trend over 5 years. And then on each, and go quickly through the statistics, you see it starts at the top, there are rankings. That's just where the race ranks within its division of for that particular statistical measurement. So by NARC rating, by points, and then by percentage of graded stakes winners in a race. And then just the simple conditions of the race, number of starters, and then the point system. A race can earn points, or a horse earns points that it takes into a race. It's a sliding scale. If a horse wins a grade 1, it gets 6 points. Second, 4, third, 3, and then it slides on down. A winner of a grade 2 gets 4, 3 for second, 2 for third, and then on down 3, 2, 1 for grade 3s, and then 2 for the winner and 1 for second place for a listed race, and then winning just an open stakes race that's not graded. So what we call a non-listed black type race, you get 1 point for excuse me, 1 point for winning, and that's it. So that just summarizes of the horses that participated in each of the five races under review. It summarizes those points that were earned and then the total of the points. The quality points, that's just simply the number and the type of graded winners in the race. So a grade 1 winner has a point, grade 2 winners get a point, and grade 3 winners carry a point in. And then in the chart, you'll see on the right-hand side the quality points, and then the points that horse is bringing in. And then before that are the 3 NARC ratings, which are done by a panel of 5 racing officials from around North America, where every week they go through all the eligible races and assign a numerical ranking. It's similar to what the Europeans do and the rest of the world does as far as their ratings. and they're done for the race, and then it's broken down into the rating that that panel gave this particular race, and then the rating, the best overall rating the horse earned throughout the year in any stakes race it ran in, or any eligible stakes race it ran in, and then the best NARC it earned in the category, what they call the smile category, whether it be a sprint, mile, intermediate, long, or extended, which we don't run in the US, or there's only a couple races. So within that smile category, so it gets a little bit more granular.
And Andy, if I could just to clarify, the ratings that you're discussing right now are only on eligible races that could possibly be graded.
Correct.
So existing graded races or any black type race.
Yes.
Right. So that model or that metric approach to measuring races is coming only at the very top of the North American races right now. And that's been done for the entirety of American graded stakes history, right?
I think, no, it goes back to the mid to late 90s. Howard Battle started it. You know, he saw what was being done around the world and his relationships with handicappers and in other countries around the world, and wanted to bring that system here as a way to help evaluate the top level races.
So whereas in many other parts of the world, there are quality ratings on all horses, in North America to date, they've really only focused on the top black type races.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is probably the only place you'll see them, is in the people who
right. It's not a published figure.
Yeah. Equine Line. Okay. If I'm remembering right, Susan, it's up on Equine Line does put them up, and you can go look up a horse and see if they have a NARC rating. So they're out there. I don't know how many people look at them, but they are published. So so that chart you see there's replicated 4 times for each of the 4 other years in the book.
So just as Andy said, these are the statistical categories that we look at for each horse. And if we want to go down to the chart and just to go across real quick for accelerate, to start at the end where it says points. And then right before it says Q points. So the grade 1, what that grade 1 signifies is that horse won a grade 1 in the last 2 years. Everyone collects points for 2 years. So he had a grade 1, he got 6 points. Go down to the next horse. He had won a grade 2. So he's getting grade 2 points for this race. He got 4 points, and on down. This is one of the rare races where you're going to see, as you go down the Q points, that everyone in there is, grade 1 or grade 2 winner. So hence, this is the #1 ranked race for older horses on dirt that there is, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But we look at 5 years of this stuff, compare it to other races in the category. And if it were as simple as just saying, oh, well, you got a 32 and you got a 31, you're ahead of the 29, we wouldn't need us.
This isn't the BCS ranking system.
Right. So we take this information, and the 11 of us sit around a table for a day and a half and discuss literally each race that comes in front of us in relativity to other races in the same category, and decide if a certain race needs to be looked at to be moved up or down. And, in many cases, it's simple to tell, okay, this one's fine where it is, this one's fine where it is. And then we'll get to one where, maybe the points are down a little bit this year, and maybe the NARC rating is suspect this year, and we'll break it down, and we'll spend, anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes per race if we have to discuss it. And then when we do, if someone says, hey, you know what? Let's vote on this. We'll go through the process and decide if it goes up and down. So these numbers will take a little bit of life once you look at them and understand what they mean. But we're happy to have them. But it's the human element is definitely
still
involved.
very important. And
do you have a mic for Dave? Or in case you want. I'm tough to get the mic away from.
yeah, I would say that I would guess, I wouldn't say 50-50, but the knowledge the people on the committee bring to the table, and their knowledge of the horses and the races compared to just the cold stats as far as what goes into a decision. I don't know, it'd be 50-50, but not too far off, probably maybe 60-40. But there's still very much so a large portion of it's the human element and the knowledge that you people bring to the table.
Yeah, and what another unique feature of this group that meets usually in Lexington in December, we're for the graded session, is Toba, who's in charge of the operation, invites, what do we call them? Observers. So they're allowed to come. They're not allowed to comment. And anywhere from 3 to 6 observers from all people asked to come. They invite some people, and they sit and watch the process. And they might come in with a little chip on their shoulder, but by the time they watch what we do for the day and a half, they go, I gotta, wow. I mean, we break down stuff that you wouldn't believe, and walk out of there. Even we walk out of there going, you know what? Not everything didn't go the way that we thought, but it got a fair shot, and the process is about as good a one as I've seen in the game.
The dynamics of racing in the U.S. are a little bit different than they are in most places in the world. We have a decentralized racing here in the U.S. We don't have a central authority or a governing body, whereas in most countries, they have a pattern. They have a governing body that dictates when races are run, where they're run, for how much money, so on and so forth. And here in the States, it's up to the individual racetracks to develop their race schedules, their stakes programs. So we have to be flexible and mindful of changes that take place all the time within our racing. And the other thing that we really kind of strive for is to have balance within our graded stakes. So in each division, you're really trying to go after the pyramid model, where you have the least amount of grade 1s, you have a few more grade 2s, and you have more grade 3s. So if you have 4 grade 1s, you'd like to have in the ballpark of 8 grade 2s and around 12 grade 3s. And that's not an exact number, but you'd like to have it structured to where at the end of the day, you have a good balance and you have an equitable process to the divisions.
And just to take the next step from here, so all that information on each of the races, or at least it's the statistical information, is then summarized on a divisional index. So every race in the division is laid out there, broken down by 1s, 2s, 3s listed, and then the non-listed black type, or the U races, with their statistical measurements, a little bit of information about the race, its grading history on the left, the most current running, how many renewals are under review, the purse, obviously the race and the track, and then going across the 5-year average for each of the statistical measurements. And then from there, as well as now we add the field size there on the far right. And then I should also say, for the listed and non-listed races, there's an additional measurement, the race quality score, because the non-listed races are judged on their race quality score. That's how they're determined to either receive or not receive black type. So that's there. And so to give the committee some help and to see if they should move up to listed, that is also included But then you'll see there's red and green numbers, and what that is then the committee then determine or calculates what the bottom and top, or the bottom 20th percentile is at the grade level, and then those statistical measurements that fall in the bottom 20th percentile for that measurement and that grade level are highlighted in red. And then as you go down, then the twos, threes, and listeds and non-listeds, there'll be numbers in green. That means that statistical measurement is above the bottom 20th percentile of the grade above it. So it just helps the committee identify races that could be possibly upgraded or downgraded. And then if you have enough red numbers, the name of the race goes in red, and it needs to be discussed for a downgrade. It doesn't mean it has to be, but it needs to be at least discussed. And the same with if you have enough green numbers, the race is then highlighted in green, and it's excuse me, discussed for an upgrade. And so the committee then just goes through each division, working typically from the top down, looking at those races that, because they have to discuss them, as well as going through most of the other races listed there, because sometimes races, the system, a flaw of this system is that it's self-perpetuating. You have to be graded to earn the points, to earn the quality points and stuff. So it can be self-perpetuating. So it will go through a number of other races there that aren't in red or green, and because the numbers don't tell the whole story, and you have to know that they're on there because they know the horses, and they dig deeper, and excuse me. So usually a fair number are not highlighted in red or green that you see that are changed each year. So in any case, that's just a quick summary then of how it goes through it. And then Rick brought up the voting. So any member of the committee can request a vote on a race, up or down. And then it takes a supermajority to upgrade a race and a simple majority to downgrade. So that would be 7 or 8 out of 11 to upgrade and 6 out of 11 to downgrade, because it's much easier to upgrade a race than it is to downgrade, because no one's going to really yell at you if you upgrade the race.
I think there's some positives and some negatives here. The positives being that there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into the type of races and how races are classified at the absolute top of the American thoroughbred racing system. The negative is that the vast majority of races are not at the top of the American thoroughbred racing system. And the vast majority of horsemen are not affected by this. But there is process, there is consideration. And something that has been ongoing now for the best part of 9 months is consideration from a variety of industry organizations of how potentially to help horsemen day in and day out get their horses in races more frequently with greater options, and to make more starts and to accumulate, frankly, more prize money. The statistics as recorded by the Jockey Club show that in 2023, there has never been a point in time where American thoroughbreds have raced less on an annual basis. The number was 5.87 starts per horse in 2023. If we went back to 2013, the number was 6.3. In 2003, it was 6.6. In 1993, it was 7.8. I think all horsemen have a reason as to why some elements of this are there. But what we know is an absolute fact is that horsemen are not intending to race only 5.8 times per year. They are entering their horses far more than that. It's just a question as to whether or not those races actually get run. So,
Ron, you had something real quick? Excuse me, Pat.
About the graded stakes first. And first off, I start off this by saying I respect you panelists quite a bit. I know most of you individually. If I don't, I studied you, I promise. I, I think there should be more importance placed on the graded stakes. And I'm wondering, are there ever a lot of discussions placed on your liability in cultivating soundness of the breed by where you apply the importance of the race due to grading? The reason I ask that is that it starts at the top. I'm working on a deal right now for another group, and it's where the risks start in horse racing. And sitting in front of a horseman's group, you understand that the trainers are blamed for a lot. All of a sudden, people can't train horses anymore. Horses only run 5 times a year. You know, it's been pointed at this room and the people that we represent quite a bit. And I'm not saying that we're not somewhat or mostly responsible, but I believe that where we place the importance of the grades is where the breed will adjust. Whenever we start giving graded stakes races to 2-year-olds in May, going 6 furlongs and 7 furlongs, all of a sudden the breed wants to have that first sire with that first graded stakes placing, stakes win. Whenever we do away with changing the jockey club from 1954 to 2.25 miles back down to 1.25 miles, when we start changing the distances of the races and we start allowing there to be fewer graded stakes races at distances, and you're talking to a guy that loves sprint races, but I do believe that we don't need to be breeding for sprints. We need to be settling for sprints if they can't go 2 turns or longer. And I think that over the last 20 years, the amount of long races and the effect that lack of long grade 1 races and the opportunities to get that graded stakes racing that affect the breed have had more of an impact on the industry than anything that we could do, because now we're breeding them to go 9 and 4 in April to have precociousness and speed, because that's where there are opportunities to make money and get to the breeding shed to be Golden Pal and breed 300 horses, even though he couldn't run 7/8 to save his life. Where the Belmont winner is traditionally not given any credit in the breeding shed compared to the Met Mile winner. So I just wonder if you ever discussed yourself amongst yourself that, hey, while we're doing this grading thing, can we attempt to have an impact on the breed by placing the importance of the races that are won with greater distance and the ability to get their sound?
The answer to your question is yes. We have varied discussions on numerous topics. That because the makeup of the committee is breeders, owners, and racing people. So we get a lot of comments. We'll discuss, 2-year-old racing as a whole or 3-year-old racing as a whole. You mentioned the distance. When was it? 10, 15 years ago, we kind of decided as a group that we needed some longer races. Hence, we agreed to start incentivizing tracks to run. I'm talking 1.5 mile races type. And so if you'll see now they run the Cougar 2 at Del Mar, we have the Tokyo City, the Greenwood Cup at Philadelphia. So which that let the Breeders' Cup know that we were trying to make a trend that way. So they in turn threw their hat in the ring with their marathon race. So that came about because we discussed that, we need to try and encourage and reward horses for running longer. And, that's still going on. So just a brief comment about your answer. I mean, the answer to the question is yes, we discuss all kinds of things. And if we think we need to make a move on it, we're not afraid to make a move.
Yeah, and I would say, Ron, I think that's more of a racing thing in general. There's a lot more sprint races being written every day as it pertains to graded stakes. The shorter races have the lowest number of graded stakes. And one of the divisions, each one of us committee members is assigned a division, and we follow it throughout the year. And I keep 2 divisions, and one of my divisions is the 3-year-old sprint division, and it's the smallest of them all.
There it is.
There's only 3 grade 1s and 4 grade 2s and 4 grade 3s. And the longer races, they have a lot of opportunities. But I think generally speaking, just everyday races, we look at cards and we see shorter races and 5.5 on the turf and 6 furlongs. And, I think, that really plays into, being able to develop horses and right races that run longer. But there's plenty of graded stakes for horses going long.
Just a couple of general questions. So when you do your guide and your points, if a race is, let's say it's a graded stakes on the turf, but they have to take it off and run it on the mud, how do you treat that race for that year? Does it still accumulate the same points, or does that race get an asterisk because it's no longer, it was removed from the turf to dirt? And the reason I ask that is because Churchill's taken off their turf races this year. And just looking at, we're from Louisiana, and you have 3 graded stakes races at Churchill in the fall meet that are going to be run in November. Obviously, they're not going to be run on the turf. So wouldn't it behoove Churchill to move those races to the fairgrounds to run them on the turf so that the race still gets the same amount of credit? Or does it lose some of its graded capabilities because it's not being run on the turf?
You bring up 2 points. One is the movement of races. But your first point is whenever a race is taken off, a scheduled turf race is taken off the turf for weather. Let's just go with weather. It's immediate. Let's say it's a grade 2, scheduled a grade 2. As soon as it changes distances, it's immediately downgraded to a grade 3. Then after the race is run, immediately after the race is run, meaning the next day or two, Andy will send around the comparison of horses that were entered to run on the turf compared to the horses that actually ran in the race. And we'll take a look at that. If the same group ran, was scheduled to run on the turf, ended up running on the dirt, well, obviously it's the same group, so we can vote to move it back up to a 2. If it looks like the race was, compromised by the move and really didn't measure up, then we can vote to say, let's leave it at the lower grade for that running. So, and then when it comes back next year, it will come back as a grade 2.
Right. And those off the turf races are not included in the statistics.
And we also can't grade that race for that following year.
Right.
It gets a pass.
And then I was at Saratoga for the Belmont Week. And then the most sensitive question is why can't horses run on Lasix in graded stakes races? Because when I was up at Saratoga, they had 3 horses that came out of stakes races that ran up the track. And they ran Lasix to break conditions. Then they get into a graded stakes race and they don't run any good at all. Then they come back and run in an overnight, if you will, with Lasix, and they return back to form. So why are owners and breeders penalized to not be able to run their horses on Lasix in the graded stakes races when they're able to run them in maidens and A other than ones and 2 other thans? Why aren't they allowed to run on the same medications, Lasix, just Lasix, with respect to when they have to be at their peak utmost ability? Why is that?
It's not a rule of the committee.
Yeah, we're not in the medication business.
So as far as the graded stakes committee yourself, so let's just say,
yeah, because the committee grades the races in Louisiana and West Virginia.
Right, no, and all good. So if all of a sudden in Louisiana they say that, okay, Churchill, you're going to run your races for the road to the Derby and you can get points. However, if you run with Lasix, you won't accumulate points. You run for purse money. If you don't run on Lasix, you're eligible for the purse money and to get points. How would that affect the graded category of, let's just say, the Louisiana Derby, which is a grade 2? How would your committee deal with a mixed race? Some run on Lasix and some don't. Would that affect your ability to issue a grade to them? Or it would not?
No.
I don't believe so.
No, I would.
Okay, so if Louisiana passes a medication rule and says based on purse money, then if an owner and trainer decides, look, our horse is a bleeder and needs to run on Lasix, if it's determined that a mixed race is going, you're saying as far as its grade, it won't be affected by the inclusion of Lasix, except for maybe losing Derby points, which then gets to be in a restricted race, but we're not even gonna go there. Just for graded purposes, that race wouldn't lose its grade because your statistics are not based on whether it runs, or your points, whether it runs on Lasix or not. It's just a level of competition and how those horses perform. Fair?
That's
Fair?
right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You made one more mention about moving. Why don't Churchill just move a race to Fairgrounds because it's the same company and that. So they would have to apply to the committee to do that. You can't just move a race from racetrack to racetrack unless there's extenuating circumstances. That has happened in the past, as we know, but so you can't just decide to, hey, it's going to rain next week. Let's, put everybody in a van and move them down to New Orleans.
You can't just bulldoze a racetrack? Oh, hey.
That doesn't mean the race won't be run.
It doesn't mean the race won't be run or carry a grade one.
Or carry a grade one. So, anything else on the graded stuff? I mean, you can wheel back to it at any time later on, but let's continue what Pat was prefacing there, more some of the everyday stuff, and how does it affect you, and how does it affect the game in general?
I was going to throw the question to you, Rick, just as a longtime racing official for the best part of 4 decades, and just to give us an understanding of where racing offices are today compared to even 10, 20, 30 years ago. How have things changed? What does the infrastructure look like today versus what it was previously?
I'll tell you how I'm gonna start with how they're the same, and then I'll go back to how they've changed. So about 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call from a trainer, and Sean Clancy actually, and he called me out of the blue, and we were BSing a little bit, and he goes, "Hey, you're gonna be on some panel at the Horsemen's Conference. I heard it has to do with ratings." And I said, "Yeah." And so we started talking about things, and he said, let's see if we can answer the universal question or interrupt the universal the way things are. So at the end of the race day, the racing guys go home, they sit around the table, and they go, "God, those trainers, those horses, they never enter their horses." And then the horsemen go home and they sit around the table, they go, "Hey, we running on Sunday?" "No, there's never a race for my horse." So I think that has not changed over the years. And so we're looking to try and break that cycle. What has changed over the years is, number one, we have less horses. Let's not kid ourselves. We're 20 years, 25 years, 22 years from really cutting it in half. Mm-hmm. And we seem to be offering more choices for less horses. And when I say choices, I mean races. We seem to get ourselves into a situation where we're giving, we as a racing secretary, the trainers too many choices. I mean, when I was a race secretary, my idea was not to have them think at all. I have a horse, and that's where he's going. Now it seems to be we've gotten to this mode of, and we still have that claiming ladder 10, 12, 5, 16, 20, 25, but attached to that is maybe a non-winners of 2, as Pat was saying, non-winners since February. It's too many choices. I call it the sneaker roll. When my mom took me to get sneakers when I was a kid, low top, high top, black or white. Thank you. You're gone. Now you go in, and there's literally hundreds of sneakers on the wall, and they're whispering to you, "Take me, take me, take me." It's almost like what's on the overnight now. When you see a choices of and I just grabbed these from the last 6 months, there's extra 26. And basically you're putting a horse in, and you're going, "Please, please, 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 please take my race." That is what we're trying to eliminate. Sean emphasized it to me, and I know because I've heard it forever and ever. the worst thing on both sides is for a condition book to come out with races that hopefully are placed in the right places for you to enter. Have you enter a horse and have it not go. So you've been waiting 10 days, you've trained up to this race, you do your feed deal, you do whatever you have to do to get them ready. And then guess what? It didn't go. So now you have the decision to make. Okay, well, yeah, we're going to break back as an extra. Okay, that 4 in it. What do I do? A couple days go by. Do I breeze again? Do I not? What do I? Throws the whole thing off. So times that by half the horses in your barn that you're not sure of. We need to eliminate that. We need to give you the confidence that when you enter a horse to run, it has a better chance of running than it does today. And you do that by eliminating the chances. I have to admit, I was astounded at some of these. I picked out an overnight from not too long ago that had 24 races that didn't go and 9 went. So that means 33 choices to make 9 races. That's what's changed today. So we're going to try and fix that. And when I say we, the game, we're going to introduce a rating system whereby we can hopefully eliminate some of those conditioned claiming races. By no means do we want to eliminate claiming that gets around. We'd love to just have the claiming 10, 12, 16 the way it was, and just them be straight claiming the way it was. And be able to offer those horses that seem to need a numbers of 2 for 10 or 2, they're going to be assigned a number, as is every horse running, and as is every race that's running. They're going to be assigned a number. And once we get this system going, which we hope to get started in the first part of next month, August, we'll have a 4, 5, 6 month trial base where we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes. We'll be coming to you and asking you questions about running. How would you like things to look? And once we get this number system down, we're hoping that we can just simplify things by having I have a sample condition book here. We call them a starter rating handicaps that in the book, it'll say, okay, this race is for horses that are rated between 50 and 59. Okay, so you have a horse that's rated 52 in your barn. Guess what you do? You don't have to think, I'm going in that race. And what that does is there's a multitude of reasons why this is good for you. All the other 52s or 53s and 54s on the track are going in there. And guess what? You're going to run with your friends. An 80 cannot drop down into your division. So you're going to be able to be running a competitive race. But guess what? At the end of that race, that 52 might be your best horse in the barn. Well, guess what? When you pick out that claimant price where it's supposed to run for, pretty much it's not coming back to your barn. And in this instance, not only will you run with your friends, when you're done, it'll come back and see you at the end of the race. And, it's shown that, if we can cut down on the number of times that horses are changing barns, it's better for everybody. Now, you can choose to run that horse in a claiming race anytime you want. The claiming game is still going to roll on. But if we can take those horses that now, don't want to run for a straight claiming tag and kind of group them together and have them run with their friends, as I say that, we can now eliminate the number of races and just consolidate them. That's on the bottom end. Not the bottom end, the claiming end. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum of horses that run more towards the top. Let's say you have one of the top breeders in the world came to me and said, this sounds great because July hits and I got some mares. It's too late to breed. They're sound. I want to run them. I can't run them for a tag. They're not good enough to run a graded stakes. What do I do? I can't find, maybe I can go to a smaller track or something. So now they can run with the 80s and the 90s where whatever. I'm just throwing some of the comparison numbers. They might be up in the, they've gone through their conditions. they've really got nowhere to run competitively. Now, guess what? There's probably a few horses out there in that condition, and now they have a place to run. And it's amazing. I've sat down with a half a dozen trainers and a half a dozen owners over the last 6-7 months. And once I kind of get into the meat and potatoes of it, a light bulb kind of goes out. It's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. And, we're not trying to change the statistics and, get a bunch of arrows going up. We're hoping that we can get a horse to start maybe one more time during the year. And if we can get one more horse per race, it's a home run. And I'd
say anecdotally, just having done some research on this particular topic, we think it's possibly worth $1 billion in new handle annually if you increased the field size in America by 1 horse per race. So last year, total average field size was 7.4 horses per race. If that went to 8.4, I would even say conservatively, it's worth another $1 billion in handle. That 7 to 8 to 9 is really the sweet spot of handle increasing. And I'll talk a lot more about wagering in tomorrow's panel, but efforts to grow field size so far have generally failed. The best tracks in America from a field size perspective are often the ones that have very controlled restraint. They really have a good handle on supply and demand. Kentucky Downs, 7 days, all one surface. Keeneland, 3 weeks and 3 weeks. Oaklawn's probably one of the best in field sizes. In fact, I looked at it here. The average field size at Oaklawn in 2004 was 8.7. Last year, it was 8.8. One of the biggest differences is they're running for an average of $76,000 a year now for those 8.8 horses, and it was $24,000 a race 20 years ago. But why does Oaklawn do so well from a field size perspective? They have a very strong control over supply and demand. 1 surface, 4 distances.
So
that's it.
That translates to less choices. No, I mean, no. If they're running on dirt and they're running 3/4 of a mile, mile and 1/16. So guess who's showing up on the Oaklawn backside? Horses that want to run 3/4 on the dirt, mile and 1/16. So the field size has not gone up terribly because they've always had that, and that's the horses that have been showing up at Oaklawn for years. More and more of them are trying to get in there now, of course, because of the money, but it has to do with the choices. Less choices, that's where you go. Well, that always helps. Well, there's less tracks running at the same time now, and not. That's true. Yes.
Sure.
I think it was 2000, maybe it was 99.
Who'd you sit next to? I'm sorry.
Bob Holtis. Yeah. And Jimmy Garoot. And we're all sitting up there watching. Jimmy brings up the forms for the day. And there's a new form for the first day of the new year for the new meet. And they listed a number right beside the trainer. And I said, what's that? And it's a new number that they're trying out for gamblers. It's called the win percentage. This win percentage number puts a numerical value on how good you are as a trainer to people that's making the decisions of who they send horses to. So basically what they've done, and you watch the field size go down, all of a sudden everybody's 25% who's aggressive minded and dropping the horses from 20 to 7,500 or don't run unless everything's 100% perfect and no giving a horse a race anymore. All of a sudden aggression is rewarded with more opportunity of horses.
If you're gonna, now you're working a horse 10, 12 times. I think Zenyatta worked 23 times before she ran. 6 of them over 3/4. World, you look at No Double, he had 2 3/8 breezes, and they give him a race for maiden 7,500. The difference is aggression to manipulate a number that is often used as a determination of who gets the opportunity with the horses. That's why Steve Asmussen, Todd Pletcher, Brad Cox have 300 horses, and Steve Hobby has 6. They're the ones they see winning. They control the narrative, and it all has to do with that. I think, like he said, whenever one person has, Todd Pletcher tried to send me a horse 4 years ago at Saratoga. He said, just this owner has you down as a trainer as well. I want you to keep this horse. And I said, man, it's a nice horse. He broke his maiden for 50 at Aqueduct. He goes, yeah, he's probably an A other than. He said, but I said, won't you keep him? He said, I have 11 for that spot. The race won't go unless I spread them out.
Well, I'm sure, Eric, you could have another 2 days of panels on. You have no idea how many times probably the 4 of us have sat down and over the phone or over a cocktail or two and discussed the super trainer effect on racing and how to fix it. And when the lawyers get in the middle, you try and take some horses away from one of these guys, and you're gonna hear it. But we agree with you 1,000,000%. Obviously, that if we have 1,000 horses, would you rather have 10 people with 100 or 50 of them with 20?
Most likely they're not going to get in because there's not enough. And the biggest thing is if they can't keep 300, they're going to give them to a trainer that can take them so their horses can run.
Well, so I don't want to get into a big discussion on this, but I'm Mr. Big Shot owner. I want Ron Moquette as my trainer. I don't care if he's number 12 on the line for the A other than. That's believe me when I tell you, they want, when you're sitting next to somebody in the airplane, who's your trainer? Ron Moquette. Ooh, they want, I'm serious. They don't care sometimes. We've listen, we've all sat down with some of these owners that have this, and they're happy with the way things go. And when it's time, their month comes along and they get in that maiden special and they're 3 to 5 and they're thrilled about it. But like I said, we could go on and on about
yeah,
it.
Rick, I just want to bring it back on topic. I mean, I understand that those conditions that you guys are kind of talking about are certainly a problem and not addressed by these guys, right? So we're really talking about some specifics and conditions that, in the opinions of those who have been working on it, but that has nothing to do with how many stalls anybody gets at any track. So let's bring that back, please.
I think the other element to all of this is that field size is likely to continue to decline in the near term, given the increased scrutiny and increased veterinary scrutiny that exists. And I think we've certainly seen that across America in the past couple months. So what steps are in place to help owners prepare for when their horses are going to run, help trainers find spots for their horses, and help racing offices write an appropriate level of race that is going to actually fill. And to that extent, with the thanks of the folks at Encompass, I did get some statistics for them on a pretty brief time frame, asking them what percentage of races that are actually in the condition book are run on the day in which they were scheduled. In 2004, that number was just about 60%. 60% of the races in the book went on the day in which they were scheduled. In 2023, that number was 42%. Right? So what we're talking about here is basically a 30% decline in races actually being run that were in the book. And it goes to Rick's point about extras and how many extras are now being propelled. But is that not a health and safety issue for the horses in terms of getting them, if you're pointing your horse to a particular race, that if it doesn't go and you don't know when it's going to go, it's really difficult to train for that, let alone find other horses that are going to line up for a particular spot. So how are racing offices considering this?
Everybody loses when the races in the book don't go, is the way I look at it. I mean, that's when I Santa Anita, when I had but I mean, I'd spend, hours and hours and hours trying to put, place races. And look, racing secretaries, I mean, you could never say, well, why don't you do what that guy does? Everyone is under their own special guidelines, restrictions, situations. You have no idea what pressure is on every single day. I always say it's not like at the marketing department, you can say, oh, we had 10,000 people there. I can't say, the races were 10 in each race, when here's the overnight and there's 5 in each race. So you have to produce one of these every single day before you leave and go eat dinner. And it's not as easy as it sounds. So, and I'm not saying these people that, that some of these extras that I put on, maybe that's what they have to do at this point to get the job done. But there's got to be a better way. And that's what we've come up. We're trying to come up with. This is not a, couple weeks ago, hey, let's try this. I alluded to earlier, this has been talked about. Sal Sinatra, who is one of our team, brought this up and gave a speech, a talk, a presentation at the roundtable meeting in Saratoga. I'm going to say 5 years ago. And usually when I say 5, you got to add a couple. So maybe 7 years ago. Pat has brought this up continuously in his work for the Thoroughbred Idea Foundation. I wrote a paper involving this probably about 5 years ago as well. It's always been kicked around, and we've never had the right people involved at the right time to back us up. And we're at the moment now where we actually have major circuits, major races. I'm going to say First Racing, NYRA, they are asking us, how soon can we get this stuff in our book? They're willing, they want to try this. They see the future in it and the possibilities to improve their field size. So we have, Equibase is involved and Encompass, and we have racetracks. We're talking to the Jockeys Guild, and we talk about handicaps. How we're going to, we're going to cap the low weight at 118 pounds. So there's not going to be any more anything below that except for apprentices. We're going to involve horse players. We're going to have horse players join with us when we go through our quality control, when we're comparing numbers to races, to charts, to odds. Before we get all this stuff going, we're going to come to you, meaning horse owners, trainers, have you look at stuff, see if you see something that is a little off kilter. So when we start this thing, hopefully sometime in the first quarter of next year, we will have done what we can do, and it'll be a fluid situation where we'll be moving and changing things probably a lot at the beginning. But I think the general idea is a simple one. It'll make it easier. Like I said, it'll make it easier for when you give out stalls, everyone will have a number. It'll be easy for the racing secretary to punch up, okay, how many fillies and mares going short do I have between 40 and 70? And they'll get a list of them. And so, that control alone should make things even better. I had someone ask the question, well, why don't you just use a buyer number and go off of that? And, that's a fair point, but in all essence, those are handicapping numbers. They're done strictly for handicapping. They're taking in, similar factors, but not every factor is going to be taken in to derive the number. The number is going to be done algorithmically using artificial intelligence. It's not going to be 5 guys in a smoke-filled room going, 52, 53. It's going to be done, systematically by a company that's been doing this for years and has given out numbers. I'm going to say at least 1 million races, I would say, Pat, haven't you, over the time. So we have a base. We're not starting from scratch as far as that goes. So we're very excited about this. There's a couple board meetings that are going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks that if we get the go ahead, we'll start cranking this up, and you'll start hearing from us. We'll be asking questions about.
Quick question though. When you
yes.
say that it's not 5 or 6 guys standing in a room making this up,
you
got to remember coming up with the algorithm. You're talking about the number that buyer comes up with, and it's 5 or 6 guys. you got to remember that these algorithms are produced in the exact same way. There's bias that's going to be created when you put these together. They talk about that now, even with a lot of the algorithms that sit out there with other different aspects. There's bias that's put into them. The police departments, a lot of these profiling expertise that they do these algorithms to put these together, they say there's actually bias already written into those codes. So I have a hard time thinking that you're going to somehow write the bias out of this, of whoever is actually writing the algorithm. It's going to exist. I'm not sure how you're going to accomplish that, getting that out of there. The other issue that I'm trying to figure out and wrap my mind around is when you have something along the lines of a number that's supposed to be generated for this, do you ever worry about somebody potentially seeing this coming along and holding a horse so that they get a lower number? Because it's a lot easier to lose a race than it is to win a race. And we always sometimes forget the whole idea behind claiming is to create parity. I know you talked about a horse dropping from 30,000 down to 10,000, but the whole idea is that everybody sees that horse. He can run for that lesser amount. And the idea is, one, I can take that horse out of that race then. If that $30,000 horse is worth that amount and he's dropping to 10, I can claim him. You're not supposed to be dropping from the clouds. If you do that, you're going to get the horse taken. But I'm more concerned about a situation because I've been tracking this a little bit also. I had some questions. I heard about this kind of scenario a few years back on the RTIP when it got brought up, and I'm not sure if it was Pat or somebody else discussed it then. And I heard it was also slightly loosely based on what was occurring over in Europe. So I talked to a few guys over there. What they're telling me is they don't like this claiming process. They don't like the number process. It's a little bit too malleable in terms of being able to, quote, cheat the system. If you have a horse that's on the verge, it's not that difficult to tell the jock, maybe don't put forth best effort. Maybe this 60 needs to be a 50, and I can get it in a lower race, and I have easier competition.
It's not hard to do that now anyway, right?
But you got parity.
Sure, but you're also taking an opportunity to race and throwing it away in the hopes that you're going to get a lower rating at some point down the line and potentially race for less money, right?
Yes, but at the same time with claiming, you're not necessarily going to do that. You're looking at the race and you're trying to figure out where the source is going to fit overall. But I'm saying you're trying to now manipulate and come up with a number. If these guys can figure out, sourcemen are smart, they're going to figure out what number it is, how this is getting generated, and you're going to create a number for them. They might be able to adjust on that and do things so that in order to get a lower number, they can jump into a race. With claiming, that's not the case. You can't, there's only so much you can manipulate now, because if somebody sees that and they think that you might have been trying to play with that a little bit, you drop that horse down, they're going to take it because that's what the parity is there. That's what's created by having the claiming rank established in the first place.
Yeah. I'm very concerned with the general approach to integrity and any place anywhere in the world where there is a ratings-based system. The stewards have to be involved to hold jockeys and trainers accountable for anyone who's trying to manipulate the outcome of a race. I would argue that that happens today already, and that our stewards are not coming anywhere close to taking the necessary measures to protect the integrity of the race.
I understand that you might have seen that, thought that was the case at that point.
You're talking about a parimutuel tote manipulation incident, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But that still comes back to the point that somebody race, you actually called somebody out correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Without any actual other thought that might have been.
Well, there was clearly manipulation on that race through the parimutuel pools. We knew that. And the Iowa Commission did not investigate it further. So, yeah. Well, the race happened, right? The incident occurred. There was no argument of that.
But there's no way to then name a jockey Ken Tohill in this particular case.
Yep.
You named him, but you didn't have any proof that he actually did something.
Okay, Rick, you go. You got some more. Go ahead.
I was wondering where I was here for a second. But anyway, this is actually the first time that we've openly talked about our plan in public. I've kind of chummed it a little bit on the radio here and there, but when Eric asked us to talk about it, I said, you know what, this is close enough to we've had enough meetings. This is close enough to say, you know, kind of open it up and say, hey, it's going to be out there now, unless we get shot down in the next couple of weeks. But we plan to go forward. There's no you know, hammerlock on any track, obviously, to try it. You can do what you want. There's not gonna be any, you know, HISA rules saying you have to do this new ratings thing or you're out. But we've had a lot of positive feedback from racetracks already that they would like to investigate it further. So we're gonna move along and hopefully, you know, if we next meeting that we come back to maybe next year, we'll have some numbers on how things are working. But we think, look, there hasn't been. I asked somebody the other day. I said, "When's the last new race or new type of race you've seen?" Exactly. There hasn't been a new race in this game in 100 years. We've tried to move things around. The game is moving. The game is kind of we've been a little stagnant in certain parts of the game, and one of them is creation of new races, new events. We got to keep moving forward, and the rest of the world, it seems to work very well with the rest of the world. And we're not that we're trying to copy them by any means. We just think that, you know, as sitting in the chair, being in that position for so many years, having only so many tools to work with, this will help us and more importantly, help you guys, help the horsemen, help you guys plan for races, run your horses more, you know, allow it to give you more options by having less options. And
I think we're well aware that there's no perfect system out there, but we have to make tweaks and changes to the current system because we do have a declining foal crop. We've got to give owners more opportunities to run their horses. And, you know, we have to find ways to change the system a little bit, make adjustments to try to get more bang for the buck for the owners, for the gamblers, and the trainers, the horsemen.
And we know also that just at the tail end of the last panel here talked about X, not Twitter, X. We expect to get counter. We appreciate your comments and you know, asking about biases and asking about, you know, what about this? And you know, we welcome, you know, opposing views. I mean, that's pretty much the way it is. And anytime you do, you know, put your neck out a little bit, you're gonna sometimes have people want to chop it off, and that's fine. We welcome, you know, there's probably maybe some things that we didn't think about or overlook that we want to sit down and talk about. This is a fluid situation, and we, like I said, we hope by the first quarter next year we have a working, real live, you know, working project that some tracks are going to try, and others are going to be looking over the program, going, what's going on over there? And that's all. We think it'll help the game, and that's hopefully what we're all sitting in this room for. And it's very healthy when we do get people from all over the country to sit in a room and trade ideas and not just rehash old ideas and wonder why they're not working. So that's pretty much it. I'm glad that Eric, you gave us the opportunity to kind of, you know, let it be known that ratings are, you know, coming down the track.
Well, thank you guys. I think at the end of the day, I want to kind of reiterate that point. Go ahead. Thank you. The thing that I wanted to establish when we talked about this as a panel is that it's a possibility and it's a choice. And we don't know it won't work until we try. Doesn't have to be a racetrack that you're at. You can ship to those races if you want to. You don't have to. It's not in a system to set up to eliminate claiming races. And that was something I made very clear to Rick. You know, that's not something I wanted to bring. Obviously, we are, along with Toba, you know, we highlight the claiming game with the claiming crown. So we don't want that to go anywhere. You know, I always almost anecdotally say 93% of racing is not the graded stakes committee. I was one of the observers. You know, that's a very small, minute portion of racing. But also at the end of the day, I see the need for, and I get, as some of you have said, I live in the fishbowl. I get owners banging on the door. I can never run my horse, or whatever excuse it is. So this is an opportunity. It may not work. Shit, it may fail. At the end of the day, we don't know that until something's tried. And again, it sounds like there's some racetracks that want to try it. I don't see those racetracks sitting out here today, so let them try it. We'll see it works, you know. And again, I'm not in the room to develop this system. Don't know how it's being developed per se myself, but these guys have some expertise in a space that I do not. And if it is worth trying, there's certainly people in that room that I do think they've got the knowledge, so let's see if it works. And that's all we're talking about here. Trying to educate folks on what something could be, and maybe it's beneficial, maybe it doesn't. You know, Frank Stronach came up with a lot of ideas that were failures, but unless you try it, you just never know. So this is an opportunity to try something, and we'll see where it goes. So I want to thank the panel for being up here, Andy and David, especially talking about the graded stakes committee. The one point that I think was mentioned a couple of times, and I had a question because it came up to me in a complaint from an affiliate. They talked about it, but it wasn't really pounded home, in my opinion, in the presentation. It's not just one meeting that they decide to downgrade a race. I was glad Andy showed his figures, which again, it does kind of get glassed over when you start looking at them. But it's an evaluation over, you know, 5 to 7 races before a decision is made and discussions are had. You don't just have one bad year and a seeming class drop of horses and these guys deciding December to change it. There is a system where they evaluate it over a multiple year period of time before that happens. So that was one of the points that I wanted to try to wanted to try to reiterate from the graded stakes committee. So
Eric, I want to point out, you know, we try not to revere any sacred cows either. We've had, you know, some very prominent races like the Grade 1 Woodward at Saratoga, that race has been won by the all-time greats. I think Forgo won it 4 times. Seattle Slew affirmed. You can go on Cigar, Holy Bull. It's been a who's who. It's one of the great races in the canon of American dirt racing. And we downgraded it a couple of years ago. It just wasn't meeting the standards. And so that's something, there's tough choices that we have to make sometimes, but it's black and white. It's right in front of us. And we, you know, we try to keep quality control and hopefully it gets its luster back and it proves itself to be the grade 1 that it should be. But you know, there's no, you know, very few races that are you know, that are not available to, you know, that we wouldn't be willing to downgrade. I mean, that's an important race, and hopefully it gets back up one day.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. Thanks to Toba and the Kentucky HBPA for helping sponsor this panel, and appreciate you guys being here.